Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Monday, March 9th, and that means March, it is spring tour time, right? Spring break, spring tour.
It is spring tour,
Spring-ish. It's not quite spring officially yet. We haven't hit vernal equinox yet.
A couple more weeks, yeah. But everyone's doing springy stuff.
This is true. We have spring break. A lot of schools around here have spring break next week.
Concordia choirs and bands are on tour.
Right. Yeah.
Yep, this coming weekend they'll be in St. Louis.
That's
the
right.
Wind Symphony will be in St. Charles.
Yeah, Concordia Chicago will be in St. Louis, and then the seminary choirs and country, they're all touring as well.
Tour season.
So we've been talking a lot about music, but what about a poetry tour?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
So let's talk with Tanner Olson of Written to Speak. Tanner Olson, author, poet, and speaker, author of I'm All Over the Place, a book of prayers, poems, and wonderings. Tanner, thanks for joining us on the Coffee Hour this morning.
It is always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Oh, it is always fun to get to talk with a poet.
It's very cool.
I think we've only had one other poet on. Michelle. We've had Michelle on a couple of times. And speaking, Michelle, do you have any new poetry? We need to have you on recently, or in the near future as well, recently. I don't know what day it is.
Monday. Words are so hard on
Tanner,
Monday.
where are you? Tell us about, well, first of all, before we get into the tour, you're a Tennessean. Is that the right word?
I guess so, yes.
Tennessean.
We live in Nashville.
Yeah. I think
we
guys
say
doing okay?
We're Nashvillians.
Nashvillians.
We are doing Nashvillians. Yeah, we are, we're doing just fine. We've been in Nashville now for about 6-7 months. And, last week was rough. Our house missed it by about a mile. And so we are feeling very thankful and very blessed. But it is a sad thing to drive around our city right now. But it is also a very beautiful thing because there are so many people coming together and working to restore what was torn down. There's a reason why, Tennessee is the volunteer state, and it is true. It is very true. So it's sad, but we're also very hopeful in this time.
Well, thanks be to God for certainly those who were spared and that your home was safe as well. Now, you've got a tour coming up, and when Lutherans go on tour, sometimes they go to tropical destinations, sometimes they go to tropical Nebraska.
Ooh, yes. I'm excited to go to Nebraska, though. I haven't been there for quite a while, so it'll be good to get back.
So tell us about your current tour and what you'll be sharing on this tour.
Yeah, so every tour for me just looks a little bit different. What I try to do is I try to find like a location like Nebraska, and I say, hey, I'm coming to Nebraska. Does anybody want to host me for an evening or bring me to your school? And so I do a couple of different things. I'll visit schools, churches, and even organizations. And with schools, I'll do assemblies and then help kids write some poems in the classroom. And for churches, I'll do about an hour-long show of poetry and storytelling. It's a fun night where I get to really just share. So think about it as like a singer-songwriter, but without the music. And then I'll also visit organizations and share poetry and kind of just talk about creative processes and share that along and how we can take creativity and faith and how all of that works together. And how can we share what it is that we believe in and who God is through the gifts that he's given us? So yes, this tour is about a 5-day trip. I'll be in Grand Island, in Lincoln, in Kearney, and then also in Seward. So, and I'm doing a handful of different things and speaking arrangements. So, all the information is at writtentospeak.com if you want to see where I'm at and what's going on.
How do you interact with the people who come to your shows? A lot of times we may read poetry, but we may not actually know a poet. So getting to meet a poet would be a really cool experience, especially if you're going to school. So how do you get to interact with the people that come to these events to hear you speak?
Well, it's really fun for me to be able to step into new places, into new spaces, and to be able to really share the words that I have written, and then for them to get to know me beyond the internet. I've gotten to meet a lot of people through interacting on the internet, and then when I meet them face to face, unfortunately, I have to say, hey, I'm going to let you down because I'm not that cool of a person. Like on the internet, I can be like, I shared this, and I did, like we can make ourselves look like we live a really exciting life on the internet, and we all know we don't do that. And so being able to just like to talk and to share these things, and one of the things I want to do is encourage people that, hey, you have these gifts as well. And sometimes we have to give them time, and we have to kind of find out what it is that we like to do, what are the things that we are good at, and then how can we use those things to glorify God, and then kind of to spread hope and announce love in new and different ways. And so, I mean, when I step into schools and churches, I really want it to feel like we're gathering together around a table, and I'm just going to share some stories and some poetry, and hopefully you leave more hopeful than when you walked in. So,
do you have a sample to share with us, like just a little taste of what we might get on the tour?
I'll give you a shorter poem today. It's not as okay. So a lot of people think poetry is just very serious and or a little somber, or maybe even a little angsty. And the poem that I'm going to share is a little sad, but it's also pretty hopeful. But I will say that the shows that I do, they are about it's mostly poetry, but there's a small percentage of it that is also like stand-up comedy. And so even in my poems, there's a bunch of jokes that I'll throw in, and then the stories that I tell in between, I tell them to hopefully make you feel less sad than maybe the poem that I shared earlier did. And so like the title of my book, I'm all over the place. I am certainly all over the place. Anyways, this is a poem called Some Days. It's a shorter poem. It is from my book, and you can also listen to it online. And it goes like this. Some days you'll need the open road and loud nostalgic music. You'll need phone calls with family and conversations with old friends. And some days you'll need the rain, and you'll need the window down. Some days you'll need to get out of the car and take a picture in the middle of the road, or pull over to watch the sunset. And most days you'll need a cup of coffee and an open Bible, and you'll need to get a refill on both. Some days you just need to be reminded that today is another day, and you'll need to do things to remind yourself that you are you and you're alive to live. But every day we will need each other, and we will need to be reminded that we aren't alone. Every day we will need meaningful hugs and hopeful smiles. We will need to hear we are loved and that it's okay for us to be ourselves. And some days we will have to ask to be told these things, and other days honest words of love will be freely spoken into our lives, and those are the days that we live for. Those are the days that keep us alive, and being alive is a good thing. So that is a poem called Some Days. It is on page 53 of my book.
Sweet.
I highly relate to that.
Yeah. Especially the coffee part.
Yeah, the coffee and Bible refill part. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And so that's a little bit of what I'll do while out on the road and while sharing poetry for groups. And it's fun to share the words that I believe in, and to see people respond to them in a positive and hopeful way, or to come back later on and read emails and check messages and say things like, hey, like the things that you said tonight really resonated with me, like more than you know. And so that's why I keep doing what I'm doing.
I noticed throughout your work and just checking out writtentospeak.com as well, hope is a very common theme in all of your work.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
I know. Yes. Like, I probably should say more than yes. I'm agreeing with you.
I like that answer. Yes. I believe in
you are right.
Hope.
I believe you are correct. I believe hope is a good thing. Well, I mean, it is written all throughout my words. I believe that hope doesn't let our story end, and as followers of Jesus, He is our hope. And I think that sometimes we just need to be reminded that hope is still real, and that hope is around, and that hope is certainly for us. And although things are heavy, and although things are quite hard, especially these days, that doesn't mean that hope is absent or that hope has left us. Hope is still here, and sometimes we just need to pause and breathe and be and remind ourselves and remind each other that hope doesn't let our story end. And I think that when we hold on to hope, like, it's not going to make every little thing better, but it might make everything just a little bit easier. And if we can make things just a little bit easier holding on to the reminder of hope, then I'll see you tomorrow. And then we can also pass that on to one another. So, yeah, hope is a big part of what I write about because I think it's the thing that we need to hear more of.
Do you have any advice for people who like poetry or maybe think that they want to write or use words in a creative way but don't really know how to get started?
Yeah, I do have some advice. The best advice I can give you is to start. And I think that's the hardest thing to do is to just start. And then also, when you start, don't compare yourself to what other people are doing. I have people come up to me and say, I couldn't do what you're doing. And I say, well, we don't need you to do what I'm doing. And I don't need to be doing what another poet is doing. I need to stay in my lane and do the thing that I feel like I am called and invited to do. A lot of times I think we get hung up on not wanting to start or being too scared to start. And then when we do start, we begin to compare ourselves to other people. Or for those of us who share things on the internet, we get discouraged when it doesn't get liked or shared or interacted with. But why do you want to do the thing that you want to do? You know? And so I think for a lot of people, just start. Yeah.
Tanner Olson, author, poet, speaker. Check out the spring tour through Nebraska, Grand Island, Lincoln, Kearney. Check out those places. WrittenToSpeak.com. Check out the tour page there on his website. Tanner, thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Anytime. I'll talk to you all soon.
Very good. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.